The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
A very warm welcome to Squawk Box. I'm Steve Sedgwick with Karen Cho, of course, and Arabile Gamedi. And these are your headlines. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump square off in the first and potentially only presidential debate as the candidates clash over immigration, abortion, and the economy.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods.
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
On the markets, big banks taking a bruising after JP Morgan claims its earnings expectations are too optimistic, whilst the CEO, Jamie Dimon, warns of the risks of stagflation.
Investors gear up for today's US inflation print as traders search for clues on the Fed's next move. Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan tells CNBC the rate environment will remain restrictive.
Somewhere over the next 6-8 quarters, you'll get to the end point. And our team believes that is 3.25, 3.5, which would mean it would be a fundamentally higher interest rate environment than anybody has been in the business really since 2006 and 7.
Auto shares slide into reverse as BMW shares hit a 2-year low alongside supplier Continental, while Volkswagen takes steps towards possible job cuts next year.
And Amazon Web Services announces an £8 billion investment in the UK, adding to a string of recent expansion moves in Europe.
We've seen a real uptake of cloud computing and AI technology by British businesses, and we know the UK has a very ambitious digital plan.
Well, there you have it. Vice President Kamala Harris and the former President Donald Trump faced off in the first, as I mentioned in the heads, potentially only presidential debate. The two candidates clashed on, well, everything, of course, but the economy, national security and immigration as they look to gain ground in what polls suggest is a neck-and-neck race. At moments like this, we always turn to Alice Barr to update us on the events and give us some analysis. NBC's Alice Barr joins us from Philadelphia. Alice, just tell us what you make of the evening.
Steve, this was a night when both nominees knew that they needed to do everything they could to appeal to those undecided voters. And for Vice President Harris, part of her strategy was to find ways to needle the former president, to try to get under his skin. She did accomplish that at times, getting him to kind of veer into some conspiracy theory territory. She also, though, had her own task to try to answer voters' questions, with many saying they still don't know enough about where she stands.
Presidential pivot point. Former President Trump and Vice President Harris shaking hands in their first ever meeting, sparring over key issues, none more pressing than the economy.
I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
His plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations.
The vice president pressed on her changing policy position since her 2019 run for the White House.
My values have not changed. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States.
The former president pushing back on his legal troubles and on accepting the election results.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy.
Former President Trump on the attack over immigration and the border.
They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane.
Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. He'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Vice President Harris blaming Mr. Trump for restrictions on reproductive rights.
Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended.
The gloves coming off tonight in a debate that could reshape the race for the White House.
The nominees also sparred over foreign policy, with former President Trump arguing that he could negotiate from a position of strength to wrap up foreign wars, exert influence, particularly in Ukraine. He said he could have that under control within 24 hours. Vice President Harris pushed back sharply against that, saying the only way he would try to wind down the Ukraine war would be to hand it over and let Russia win. Back to you, Steve.
Alice, thank you very much indeed for that instant analysis, and we'll speak to you, I think, in an hour's time as well. Let's get some more views on this. Tora Jones is the mayor of the city of St. Louis, and of course I should mention as well, a member of the Missouri Democrat Party as well. Tora, brilliant to see you. Thank you very much indeed. I have one starting question for you. Did the debate itself and the performance of the two candidates, do you think, move the needle on voting intentions, especially in the purple states, more than Taylor Swift's endorsement last night? Or was Taylor Swift's endorsement more important for the destiny of those undecided voters?
Well, that depends on who you ask. Thanks for having me. If you are a Swiftie, I'm sure that Taylor Swift's endorsement definitely moved the needle a little bit. But I saw a statistic earlier that said 30% of registered voters were counting on tonight's debate to make a decision about who they would vote for. And what I saw was two different candidates, a candidate who was well prepared to talk about her plan about the economy, about healthcare, about abortion, about international issues, about the U.S.'s position in the international stage. And we saw a 34-time convicted felon who missed an opportunity to tell America how he would rule different than he did when he won in 2020.
Man, let me just come to the performance, because it felt as though there'd been a ton of rehearsals taking place behind the scenes for Harris, some of that really kicking in, sharp retorts to Trump, but also then pushing on to some of the policy platform. How do the Democrats feel that this played out for Harris?
I think this solidified her policy positions on a lot of things, on how she would help everyday American people. She talked about her upbringing, about how her mother rented their apartment for many, many years and didn't get a chance to buy their first home until she was a teenager. Talked about her middle class upbringing and how her mother worked hard and saved and sacrificed in order to push her and her sister forward. That is the story of a lot of American families across this country. And she came with definite plans on how she was going to lift the middle class and help everyday working people get to a part of the middle class and help families thrive.
Mayor Jones, though, perhaps Donald Trump didn't go after the vice president as much as some people thought he would do on her economic record, on the record of the Biden Harris presidency as well. Americans, and you know this better than I could possibly know, in the city of St. Louis and throughout the country, are struggling with the cost of living crisis as well. Do you think, actually, looking at this objectively, that the Democratic government has done enough for Americans in helping them out already in the current administration, rather than the next administration, of helping them out of this cost of living crisis?
Yeah, so speaking for St. Louis, when Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act and President Biden signed that, St. Louis, Missouri received almost $500 million to recover from the COVID pandemic. And we're using those dollars intentionally to help families thrive. We're building new homes. We have a guaranteed basic income pilot going. We've granted millions of dollars to small businesses to get back on their feet. We are fixing our crumbling infrastructure and much more. So the Biden-Harris administration has been key to mayors like myself and mayors all across this country in recovering from the COVID pandemic. And we look to see more once Vice President Harris wins in November.
Mayor, can I just ask you about the desire for change? Because this was something that Trump was talking about as he tried to paint Harris as an incumbent. That was around the issues in regards to foreign policy when the war in Ukraine started, around the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and also other policy issues while she's been in the White House, and while she's been rather in charge. In terms of what we're seeing, do you think we had enough that Harris managed to distance herself from Biden and look like she was not the incumbent?
No, absolutely not. Anytime that you're withdrawing from a war-torn country, there's going to be a little bit of chaos. We saw that in the 60s with Vietnam, and we saw that again in Afghanistan. There are no easy ways to exit a war. And I think that the Biden-Harris administration did the best they could when they exited Afghanistan. And also, we have been an ally to Ukraine and trying to help them fight back against Russian influence. And I don't think that Vice President Kamala Harris should distance herself at all.
One more question, if I may, Mayor. Missouri is expected to remain solidly Republican. Donald Trump did pretty well last time round in Missouri as well. Why is it Missourians are voting Republican? What are the key issues for them that make them want to trust the Republicans more than the Democrats?
Missouri is a tricky state. See, when we have things that are important on the ballot, like this fall, we'll have the abortion measure on our ballot, which is polling 10 points ahead. But however, we are also electing a new governor and several other statewides in addition to our U.S. senators being challenged. Those Republican races are 10 points ahead of the Democratic challengers. Missouri is really funny that way. We will vote for good things on a ballot initiative like legalizing marijuana or Medicaid expansion or, expanding health care for everyone. But when it comes to candidates, they still are very conservative. I can't understand it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We must let you go, but we do appreciate you sticking around to speak with us this morning. To Tora Jones, Mayor, City of St. Louis. We're going to get another perspective on the debate with Republican strategist Matthew Bartlett. That interview is coming up on Street Signs at 10 a.m. CET. And you may be seeing a lot of photos on social media of Taylor Swift with her cat. The pop star gave...
Well, that cats have become the surprise issue of this election after obviously the strange J.D. Vance comments and of course the concern about immigrants, and this was something that was brought up, whether immigrants ate pets or not. I'll just leave that one there as a question for our viewers. I think we probably all think we know the answer to that one as well. So cats are the surprise issue. So Taylor Swift getting involved with her cat. Again, she's picking up the thematic.
She is. So the pop star gave Kamala Harris her backing in the presidential race in the aftermath of the debate. You can check out all those details on CNBC.com. Arabile.
Well, Karen, coming up on the show with markets pricing in a rate cut at the Fed's next meeting, investors are looking to today's CPI print for a few more clues on how far they may go. We'll break down what to expect. That's coming up next. Plus, Spanish fashion conglomerate Inditex, well, they're said to report their first half earnings today. We'll bring you those numbers as soon as they cross the wires. That's anticipated then at the bottom of the hour. And we'll be joined then by the CEO of Trustpilot after the group's first half trading update. Don't miss that first on CNBC conversation at 9 o'clock CET.
Shares in JP Morgan at the bottom of the stock strip, or I should say the S&P 500 yesterday, right at the bottom there. You can see the slide to the tune of 5% that was in the red after the bank's president, Daniel Pinto, admitted net interest income expectations were likely too optimistic with the Federal Reserve on a rate cutting path. His comments follow Monday's warning out of Goldman Sachs, which said it expects to see trading revenue drop 10% for the quarter. Elsewhere, JPM CEO Jamie Dimon said he still sees inflationary pressures on the horizon and warned the worst potential outcome facing the US economy would be stagflation, recession coupled with rising inflation. The Federal Reserve's head of regulation, Michael Barr, has outlined plans to raise big banks' capital requirements by 9%, part of a draft being dubbed the Basel Endgame. It marks a significant step back from original plans to hike requirements by 19% for banks with more than $100 billion in assets. The initial draft rule announced last year sparked significant pushback from Wall Street. Major US banks still closed Tuesday's session lower. Well, now speaking to CNBC at the Barclays Global Financial Services Conference, Barclays boss Venkat said he's open to regulation so long as the rules are the same for similar-sized banks.
The UK is, we understand, coming out in a couple of days with their version. And what we hope is across the banking system globally that we align on roughly the same quantum of capital for the similar businesses, and we do it at the same time. That's the purpose of global financial regulation, and that's what we hope to see happen.
Oh, come on, you're all excited about the CPI now. It's not just about overnight events, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so. Right, attention today, turning to August CPI print out of the US. The headline figure is forecast to have risen 0.2% on the month and 2.6% on the year. That is the lowest rate since March 2021. The core figure is expected to hit 3.2% on the year, steady on the month before. If it gets to those numbers roughly, that's 25 basis points, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Well, we'll ask our guest later on. How about that? The Bank of America CEO, Brian Moynihan, told CNBC he sees the Fed cutting 3 times before the end of the year, but stressed the end point will be the highest it's been for nearly 2 decades.
They now have 3 cuts in the fourth quarter, beginning in the September meeting in each meeting.
Yep.
And then they ultimately end up at a terminal rate or a terminal short-term rate, or the end point 3.25 to 3.5. And so there's a big debate of whether it's 3 or 4 or 2 or 4, and that's all interesting. The real question is somewhere over the next 6-8 quarters, you'll get to the end point. And our team believes that is 3.25, 3.5, which would mean a fundamentally higher interest rate environment than anybody has been in the business really since 2006 and 7.
And we'll have plenty more in the outlook for the US lenders later today. They don't get much bigger than Goldman Sachs Chairman and CEO David Solomon speaking exclusively to this channel, 1800 Central European Time. Karen.
And let's take a look at those US markets. You can see a little bit of green patches are forming on the boards for the S&P and the Nasdaq. But that said, I think there were still pressure points for the market, namely in the banks. We mentioned some of the selling in JP Morgan, but Goldman Sachs also under pressure right at the bottom of the Dow. And you saw the Dow flipping weaker as well. Other big name movers to the downside, Apple. Don't forget we had that big announcement from Apple a day earlier, fleshing out the iPhone lineup and where the AI ambitions are. The stock trading towards the bottom of the Nasdaq. So the implications there, I think, if you look at the slide for bank stocks of 0.8%, key name stocks like Apple falling, and the market now setting up, of course, for reaction to the presidential debate overnight. So what we're seeing across the Asian markets, already some of that initial reaction for global stocks, and you can see it is a negative read in the sentiment turning slightly weaker, as you can see, down 2% for the Japanese stock market. It has been a soft trading market in recent weeks, again trading lower. Hong Kong stocks on the back foot, and you can see a slide for Shanghai to the Kospi in South Korea, and both of those markets trading in the red as well. To the opening calls, and this is how European boards are setting up. We've got red arrows on the charts as well. Yesterday we were down about 0.5% plus on the Stoxx Europe 600. Across on the broader markets, German stocks down the most, at the core down roughly about 1%. The selling expected to continue today, so it does feel as though we are seeing a softening up in some of that momentum.
Karen, if I said to you, I want to give you loads of money, and as long as it was legal and I hadn't laundered it from somewhere, you would say, thank you, Stephen.
Are we talking about the lottery again?
Well, no, it's low. Someone else won the Euro Millions.
A different lottery.
But if I said to you, I want to give you really large amounts of money, and like, no, I don't want it, Stephen. I don't want your money.
What's it going to cost me, though?
Well, it costs you
There's
nothing.
no such thing as a free lunch, is there?
Yeah, there is for the Irish government, but they don't want it. They said, we don't want Apple's money. This has been going on for a decade. It's the weirdest story. Europe's top court ruled that Apple must pay 13 billion euros in back taxes to Ireland. Ireland doesn't want the money. It ends a 10-year court battle. The Commission is saying, you've got to take the money, Ireland. The EU Commission ordered the payment in 2016, claiming the tech giant had received illegal tax benefits from Dublin, but Apple and Ireland are fighting the ruling. When have you ever seen a state say, I don't want your money? This is the case. The iPhone maker says it will incur a one-time income tax charge of around $10 billion in its fourth quarter results. AWS has announced it plans to invest £8 billion in the UK. Wow, as part of a 5-year plan to build and operate data centres in the country. Arjun joins us more. I saw this story and I was... thousands of jobs, great news. Is it inevitable that they need a data server here? I'll ask a silly question. Could it have been something that could have been elsewhere and then operate for the UK from overseas? Or actually, if they want to grow this business in the UK, then they have to have data servers in the UK?
Yeah, one of the things what you see with cloud players is they like to have their servers located quite close to where a lot of customers are. And also increasingly governments are requiring a lot of these cloud players to have servers in the countries where they operate. So that's part of it. But this new investment comes, of course, at a time when businesses are looking at new technologies like generative AI. And that's something Amazon offers through AWS as well. They are approaching this with an element of caution, wondering what kind of return on investment it sees. And of course, Amazon now facing increased competition from Microsoft and its partnership with OpenAI and trying to step up efforts here in the UK on this new investment. I caught up with Tanuja Randri, the managing director for EMEA for Amazon Web Services, and asked what she's hearing about businesses talking about AI and adoption. Let's listen in.
Let me give you an example of banking in particular. You know, NatWest, of course. NatWest is using our technology to be able to really understand better what their customers require and to be able to predict in some ways what customers need and determine their future banking needs. So the data scientists and engineers at NatWest work together with our specialist teams in our Generative AI Innovation Center to co-create, and to your point, responsible AI products. So let me come back to that. We've also seen that businesses are looking at this in terms of both revenue growth, employee productivity, which is really, really critical, as you know, but also being able to compete globally. Those are the benefits based on some research we recently did with almost 2,000 businesses, by the way, in terms of how they see AI supporting them. And on the responsible point, we're completely committed to ensuring that the AI is responsible.
So AWS's head of EMEA, they're saying that businesses are piloting the technology at the moment. It's unclear if it's widespread use, but that's really what Amazon's trying to push at this point in time. Of course, Amazon also facing, along with Microsoft, facing a probe here from the Competition Markets Authority into the cloud market. I did catch up with Tanuja Randri on that, and we'll bring you a bit more of that later on.
We love capital investment, and it's coming in a big way from AWS. It's going into the likes of Spain, it's going to Germany, it's building out these data centers, a huge footprint. But the problem is, where are the other players? Does this mean that AWS conquers the AI data center race from the outset?
Well, we know Microsoft also has been pretty heavily investing in the UK as well. Those are the two biggest players in the market. And
where's the European player again? Which
and where is the European player? I mean, Europe's missed out on cloud. Big time. Yeah. Big time. And of course, it's these big US hyperscalers that are right now dominating globally. And of course, the Chinese players in China and also trying to make a push into other parts of Asia as well.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, when you think just where we are at in the AI race, that we're already now seeing the US clean up in terms of market share. Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabi Lekumete, weekdays on CNBC.